Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the 1994 basketball parallel designs. With basketball, it was interesting where they had 4 different companies that were making cards, and 2 of the card companies made parallels, and 2 of the card companies did not. So that corner of the hobby was split right down the middle. And what I found interesting here is that there were 8 card designs that I pulled aside as parallels, which was 4 and 4, and one of the companies was almost entirely on one side, and the other company was almost entirely on the other. Topps and Upper Deck being those 2 companies. But I do have to note that while there are 8 different designs, there are only 6 sets that actually had parallels of their cards. Even though one of the card sets, Upper Deck, didn't have any parallels, but they did have an Upper Deck SE set that acted as the equivalent of that. And so it does have a parallel, so I'm including that because it was built to be pretty much like a smaller set. It's a pretty big set, so it certainly fits, but that is the parallel for Upper Deck. Upper Deck also, however, had a 2-tier parallel, so that also fits in, which is what gets me out to 8 designs. So that means I don't have a top 5. Basically, I have 4 designs that are really good and 4 designs that are not. And for the ones that are not, that is actually the side that Upper Deck is on, which is interesting. But it becomes pretty clear when I start off with the fact that what I consider to be the worst design of all of the Upper Deck parallel, or all the 1994 basketball parallels, is SP. Now, SP fails on 2 fronts. The first being that the design itself, I think, is a miss for the basketball cards. It's not that they're bad cards, it's that they are just underdeveloped. The gold foil, while that works well for hockey, does not work well for the basketball cards. So the basketball cards they look cheap, which for SP shouldn't be the case. But then when you add the parallel, which is to die cut the top of the card, this just does not work. Now, the design comes from the 1993 SE set. They had an insert set where the cards were die cut, but the whole point was that the card was designed around the theme of a key. That's the reason for the die cutting, and that works because the design literally speaks to the reason for the pattern, but more than that, the card is all balanced. Whereas when you go over to the cards here in Upper Deck SP in 1994, they're not balanced. It's got a design on one side and then nothing on the other, so the die cutting does not relate to the rest of the card, and it makes a card that already seems kind of cheap even cheaper. This is a card where you just look at it and you go, what were they even thinking? And heaven forbid you look at the insert set, which uses the same cutting to even worse effect. This is a card where you literally look at it and you go, why did you bother? You can do great things with die cutting, and they did not. There's just too much taken out of the top, and it doesn't relate to anything else. In fact, you would probably never realize it's designed around a key if you didn't see the insert set from 1993, so not exactly a success. To give you an idea of how bad that is, though, the cards that I consider to be better than this, just better, are Collector's Choice, and Collector's Choice is the ultimate in blah. That's literally what Upper Deck created. They wanted to create a set that was just a basic set, and they created, oh my word, what a basic set in 1994 Collector's Choice. Now, the cards aren't bad, it's just that there's nothing interesting about them, nothing to inspire you. And the parallels do exactly the same thing. The silver signature parallel is what I consider to be the second worst design, and in this case, they just took the white borders and made them silver, and they added a silver foil signature, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with this. When you look at this as part of the collection of, like a player, you have all 3 cards, this actually is pretty good. You look at it and it does the things it needs to do, but it does so in the space of Collector's Choice. You take this out of there and it's immediately a boring, bland card, which again is Collector's Choice. That's the point. This is a case where you don't collect these cards because you want to look at them. You collect these cards because you collect cards. This is a set to collect, and these are the parallels to collect. That's why you go after it, and in that capacity, it's perfectly serviceable. That's the best description that you can get, though, is it's perfectly serviceable. Now, I consider to be slightly better than that the gold parallel. The gold signature cards are, well, they just chromed the whole surface with gold foil. And again, these cards don't look very good. If this is in a display case, it's kind of going to stand out, but it's going to stand out because it's like a black hole. It's this thing that you can't really see. That said, it is kind of intriguing, mainly in the space of looking at collector's choice, because now you get the ability to see all three cards. You get to see the base card, you get to see the silver parallel, and the gold parallel. The gold parallel looks like it's a more special card, but it doesn't do anything more than that. These cards are just kind of there, but again and again and again, that's collector's choice. So, okay, that's they do exactly what they're supposed to do, but they don't stand on their own. When I go to the fourth from the worst, now I go to a card that actually does stand on its own. In fact, the Stadium Club First Day Production cards, I think that this is a good feature on a card. Now, in 1993, they had a holofoil plaque. That was as good as it was going to get for First Day Production, and it looks really good. But when you move on to 1994, they have a gold foil. It looks like a hand-drawn, well, almost a damaged kind of logo. But that's the thing, it's pop art. And in 1994, that actually worked really well. Now, overall, it's not going to be as good as other First Day Production logos, but it does have an interesting look to it. And when you combine it with a 1994 Stadium Club card, which literally is designed to be a train wreck, okay, actually, this looks good. It takes the card and it makes it not so much better as much as more interesting. And so I actually like these. I don't love them, and it's held back by the fact that it's on, a 1994 Stadium Club card. So that's always going to hold it back, but it makes the card look better. So I think that overall, it's kind of middle of the road. It's a positive, but it is on the Stadium Club card that itself doesn't carry through. And at the end of the day, it's not just the feature, it's the card that I'm looking at. And so that's the limitation. Good enough, but it's only good enough to not be one of the worst three. So switching over to the top four, the best cards, or the cards that actually pulled it off, the first one that I'm going to look at is, well, it's Upper Deck SE. So this is, again, the Upper Deck set. This is a special insert set that was done with Upper Deck so that they would not do parallels of the basic cards, and I don't know why. I really wish that they had, because I love the way that the 1994 parallels come across. But for basketball, they decided, no. We're going to do a special set of cards where every single pack has one of these cards, has silver foil, it has a perfectly okay design, nothing special about the design, but out of every box, there is one of these cards that is in gold. And okay, I gotta hand it to you, I like the way the gold cards look. Now, overall, I don't find these to be as interesting as the First Day Production cards. But the overall Stadium Club cards don't read as well, I think, as the SE cards with the gold foil. So that means that this card is one that I think is now starting to progress in a positive direction. So I like it. But fortunately, the three at the top are all really interesting. These are the ones that are actually fun to look at. Starting with, well, okay, Topps Finest is a tricky one because it's always about, Finest is the same thing every single year. It's kind of like what Topps started doing with their Topps Gold, where it's just every year they put gold foil on the card. But in this case, the look of the refractor cards is always amazing. But can it save the card from the rest of the card? Because Finest cards rarely had a good design. And in 1994, for basketball, they had the gray around the outside, which, again, is seriously benefited. But that whole border is still boring. And, at the end of the day, the only thing that really carries with the refractor cards is the fact that that burst behind the player is actually pretty strong. It has a cool effect with the refractor, but it's a small part of it. So overall, with every single year, it's going to be, and that's the refractor, that's the refractor, that's the refractor. Here it is. For basketball, this is the refractor. If the card design was better, I'd like it a lot more, but it's not, so here it is. But fortunately with Topps, they did much better because the parallel for Topps is interesting. It's actually interesting. It's a card that right from the outset, you're probably not going to be too inspired by unless you actually have it in your hands, in which case it will grab your attention and it'll get you sucked in. Now, it's not going to look good in a display case because the chromed background kind of disappears in most light. But still, it's kind of like something's hidden, and it allows the player to be more distinct on the card. But then you also have the gold foil replaced by holofoil, and that holofoil counters with the chromed background to create a really intriguing card. And Topps was not exactly the best design in 1994. So that is almost a limitation, except in the case of this chromed background, the border for the card actually works pretty well, in which case this is a card that, while it's not a great looking card, it's a card that's intriguing, one that you want to explore. You want to actually play around with it, and that's what I like about it. It gets you engaged. Granted, if you don't just walk past it in the first place. But I do like these cards. But for me, number one is the most difficult of all of these, which is the Topps Embossed Gold Parallel. And here's the reason why. Here we have a rookie, and oh man, this card is amazing. I absolutely passionately love how these cards look. You can also look at the Houston Rockets and see the same thing. The way these cards come across with the gold parallel is so impressive, because look, the silver cards are perfectly fine. They look good enough, right? Well, no, actually the silver cards are pretty lackluster. The silver cards in Topps Embossed are the down point for the cards, because the main cards in the set are gorgeous cards. The silver cards are, well, it's too much silver. You shift over to gold, everything flips. The gold cards for the rookies and the Houston Rockets cards are incredible. But what about the main cards in the set, the rest of the cards in the set? Well, those suck to high heaven. They are horrendous. And they'd be competing with SP for the worst cards. In fact, originally, I didn't have this at number one because I was playing both sides, but at the end of the day, I love the rookies and the Rockets cards so much that I had to put this at number one. But I got to call out, it's only that part of the set. The rest of that set is a failure. So it's definitely a caveat, but I have no problem just pretending the rest of the set doesn't exist and just go, yeah, these cards are awesome, which they are. And I think this is going to be a place where just about everybody is going to agree with me that this shiny object is just hands down the best design in 1994 for basketball parallels. At least that's my take on it. So, feel free to comment below if you think that something is out of order. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I do urge you to do so, and thank you very much for watching.